Minister, your government has decided to deny the students a choice when it comes to this year's Leaving Cert. Now, this is despite students having come through years of severely disruptive Leaving Cert cycle, and I and Sinn Féin believe that that was wrong, that they should have had a choice. Students deserve to be given a choice. From your side, Minister, what steps have you taken to ensure that additional places are being made available on the in-demand courses, particularly those courses where we have both a high demand and a skills shortage? Thanks.
Well, thanks, Deputy Conway-Walsh. Your government in Northern Ireland has decided that the A-levels should proceed, and you didn't offer anybody in Northern Ireland a choice. So I don't think young people who look across the island will ignore the breathtaking hypocrisy in relation to the stance that you have about the exams down here to the stance you have of the exams up there. And I've actually met, and I'm sure you have too, but I've been in countless schools across this country, I think 5 or 6 counties over the last week. When you actually talk to students now, they're happy with the certainty and clarity when you take them through the options that they have in relation to the papers. And when you also take them through the really good decision my colleague, the Minister for Education, took in relation to grade inflation. I think it compares very much favourably with an area you've been very quiet on in relation to the A-levels in Northern Ireland, but I'm sure you'll respond in no.
When again have representation in the North, we'll deal with that. So
when you have representation in the North, Deputy Conway-Walsh, we generally engage constructively, but I just find like taking young people for fools ain't going to wash it. Ain't going to wash it at all. Like you're a leader in Northern Ireland. Your leader in Northern Ireland is, or at least was, the deputy head of the government, the joint head of the government actually, and you have a situation where the A-levels are going ahead. No predicted grades, no calculated grades. So where Sinn Féin are in government, you're not making the allowances that you're shouting and roaring for down here from opposition. But look, be that as it may, but you are actually a partitionist party when it comes to the issue of educational policy. Same in relation to college fees, but we'll get to that in a moment.
Right, Minister.
Thank you. I take it has to be said. It can't just be one-way traffic here. Given it has to be taken as well, because if you're serious about government, you need to actually be consistent in relation to your stance, north and south. In relation to this issue and what steps I'm taking. This government has already increased over the last 2 years the places in third level by 6,000, a massive, massive increase. So far, and it's important Leaving Cert students hear this, so far the number of applications to the CAO on the deadline day this year versus last year is down 1,141. And I say that to be hopefully somewhat reassuring to students. Now that we know the situation in relation to the Leaving Cert and we have clarity earlier than we had last year, we'll shortly see, and we haven't yet seen, the breakdown from the CAO as to how many students have applied for the different courses. My department will do what we did last year and what we did the year before. We will work with the system in relation to additional places. I fully agree with you, and I'm over time, but I fully agree, I want to come back on this. I fully agree with you on the in-demand places, and I'd like to talk about that as I come back in relation to medicine and some of the steps we want to take this year.
Yeah, Minister, we need to recognise that grade inflation is only part of the story, and the CAO points going up is also about how many places are available. Now, every year more students sitting the Leaving Cert, but as you have many times admitted yourself, the third level is not adequately funded, and you must take responsibility for that. And your party has been in government since 2011. And this has led to the increasing numbers of courses that are cheaper to deliver rather than expanding in-demand courses that reflect the real needs of the economy and society. I don't blame the individual colleges. This is how the funding model is set up by yourselves. You have announced thousands of additional places in the last couple of years, yet there was little effect on the pressure of the CAO points or the in-demand courses or the stress of Leaving Cert students. And I think that needs to be faced up to, Minister. I think it's important that we admit the skill need in our society are not being met by the number of vital areas, particularly healthcare and construction. And we have a shortage of dentists, nurses, mental health professionals, as well as quantity surveyors, engineers, architects and many others. We have demand from students and a need from society, and we need to join the dots here. A clear example of this is that the undergraduate medical places have essentially not increased in the last 10 years.
What I do fully agree with the Deputy on is that this year shouldn't just be about announcing an additional number of college places, because there will be more college places this year, and as the Deputy rightly suggests, that has been the case in previous years as well. budget 2022, this year's budget, did provide around €20 million for extra growth in the higher education sector. So there will be additional funding and there will be additional places. The bigger challenge is, rightly as the Deputy points out, to try and focus in this year on the in-demand, as you put them, the courses where there's particular pressure points. One in particular is the area of medicine. I fully agree from a public health policy point of view we need more doctors. As the Deputy will know, it hasn't been a case though of just creating a college place, because for every medicine place it requires obviously a training hospital. Similarly in relation to dentistry, similarly in relation to a number of courses. So what my department has been doing for the last number of months and is intensifying now is trying to work with the Department of Health to identify if we can provide X amount more medicine places in September across our college system funded, can the Department of Health and the HSE provide Y more training places? And I expect to be in a position to bring forward good news in relation to that. So our focus is exactly as the Deputy suggested, on looking at the in-demand areas and the areas in which we want to see public service improvement.
Thank you, Minister. But as Minister for Further and Higher Education, you have a responsibility to ensure we are training the skills that our society needs. And it's not simply about students getting the courses they want, it's about the proper planning for the skills that we need in the future. And Minister, we have almost 4,000 students that enrol in pre-nursing courses, and less than 5% of those students go on to further education to get nursing degrees in this state. And the same means the same thing as people can go abroad. And you constantly say about the pre-law when you're discussing alternative pathways, but your department doesn't collect data on the number of students that actually progress into law degrees. So, Minister, it's always about places and places tomorrow. But, you know, I think we need to be straight and honest with people. We are not providing the education system for what we need in terms of society, for what we need in terms of medicine, and what we need in terms of those nurses that need the pathway to get on into our health service. And that is why we have a shortage of together with the chronic underfunding, obviously, of higher education as well. That's why we have such a shortage of people to fill the positions.
Sorry, no, it's not. And it's about pathways, actually. It's about recognising that different students will want to do different things. And it's about broadening the conversation, and I think you and I agree on this, beyond just higher education to also further education and apprenticeships. It's about ending this snobby and elitist view that when you go into a school that the student believes the only conversation is the CAO and points. That's a complete nonsense. It's a system we've developed here without any policy debate. It's one of the reasons, Deputy, why we have had a shortage in tradespeople in this country, because of that pressurised view we've created that success is if you take one particular path. That's why this year the CAO website has been changed. That's why this year we've seen a record number of people apply to be apprentices, more than ever before in the history of our state, 8,607, most of them in the craft places. It's why we have seen cao.ie/options has seen 15,646 direct users, so students, one would presume, go and check out apprenticeships from that link as well. So it's about pathways. It's absolutely about pathways. It's about recognising that different students will want to do different things. On the pre-nursing, though, because I want to agree with you on this, we need to see more places ring-fenced in higher education for pre-nursing students, not just a general increase to the overall nursing numbers. And that is something I'm actively working on with the institutions.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Van.
And my question is to ask you, Minister, if your department will commission an audit of buildings and teaching practices in third-level institutions to determine the accommodations that can and must be made to enable greater access for students with disabilities.
I want to thank Deputy Batchik for the question, which I think is very timely, and I think I have some positive news, and maybe we could build on it. Inclusion is a core goal for my department. It's a core goal, I know, for this House, for people on all sides of this House, and ensuring that there can be access and equity of access for all students to both further and higher education. We'll be publishing our new National Access and Inclusion Plan, which has a budget of €5 million to deliver on measures in 2022. We'll be publishing that most likely in March. While higher education institutions are autonomous, the approach of my department has been to offer a range of supports which enable them to meet national objectives, including those related to inclusion and supports of people with disabilities. Last year, for example, we provided €5.8 million in funding for initiatives in 24 higher education institutions aimed at supporting students with disabilities to access and engage with higher education. And there's a variety of projects that's delivered, including sensory spaces, training of staff, development of assistive technology, mental health supports, development of wayfinding apps to help students with disabilities navigate their way around the campus, and capital accessibility improvements to campuses as well. This strategic project fund was in addition to the Standard Fund for students with disability. With regard to the very specific question relating to building and estates, I'm pleased to inform the Deputy that the Higher Education Authority is in the process of finalising what they describe as a detailed space survey of the higher education estate. As part of this survey, higher education institutions have been asked to indicate the compliance of their buildings with Part M of the building regulations, which addresses access for people with disabilities. This survey then will be regularly updated, and we will also monitor and report progress in relation to the issue going forward. Institutions can address any issue of non-compliance, because of course you've got to help people become compliant, using funding from devolved capital grants, or indeed as part of a broader building upgrade project. In this respect, I'm very pleased to say that I'll shortly, very shortly, as in this week, will be launching a new phase of capital investment calls, which will include an emphasis on alignment with universal design principles and fostering inclusion in all of its facets. So the Deputy is very much onto a very important issue here. I do think the space survey will be a foundation on which we can build.